All right, everyone, welcome back to the show. So today we are an expert in introvert real estate agents and helping introverts in real estate and in business succeed. So I know a lot of people out there who are a little bit more reserved, who also want to succeed in business. And I'm here to tell you it is completely possible and you can not just survive, but also thrive. And today's guest is a shining example of that as well. She is real estate coaches in the world. So that is something that anybody who's listening here can aspire to be definitely as well. So without further ado, I want to bring on my guest today. She is a director of growth for Keller Williams in the greater Boston area, Ashley Harwood. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm super excited to have you on and kind of share with our audience a little bit about not just your experience, but some of the things that you are helping your students in your programs as well, and the audience that you're touching as well. So, I mean, just first of all, as we kind of dig into this conversation here, would you mind just kind of introducing yourself a little bit and telling us a little bit about your story and how you kind of got into real estate and became, literally one of the top coaches in real estate in the world right now. So,
Yeah, sure. So I had always been interested in real estate, even as a child. It was fascinating to see this house sold for more than this house, but this one was bigger. So I would just sit there and read the newspaper listings and watch the house channel. And I found it all very fascinating. And then about 9 years ago, the timing was right for me to go get my license and jump in full time. So I've always been a full time solo agent. I was very stubborn. I didn't want to join a team. I probably should have. I would have made a lot more money earlier on, but I always wanted to do my own thing. So been licensed for 9 years. The first six, I was, selling and working with buyers and sellers, about 50-50 split with that. And then about 4 years ago, I started the process of launching my own consulting firm and coaching business. And it started as just a 1 hour class that I taught. It was called Introverts in Real Estate. And then that morphed into several other classes, different types of coaching, and all these different things. So now that's what I do part-time. My full-time gig is as someone on the leadership team for three Keller Williams offices in the Boston area. So I'm quite busy with helping agents in a lot of different capacities, but all coaching and training. I'm out of production at this point. So it's a very, very fun, and I'm always learning something new.
right. Yeah, I think that's really interesting as well. Kind of like your story of, getting into real estate, always in it. And now, you're actually a leader and helping other people get into the industry as well and succeeding in the industry. So I think one of the things that, I know I just have to ask, right? So starting out as just from the agent side, was there a lot of kind of resistance or struggle? Because I know what most real estate coaches teach and what most people in the industry like to teach and talk about is, you have to go out there and talk to your sphere of influence and talk to certain amount of people every day and people, and that might come natural to some people, but I don't think, as an introvert, right, that's something that comes naturally to you or to other people listening as well. So just kind of in the beginning of your journey as an agent, was there a lot of resistance there, and how did you end up kind of overcoming it?
So I tried to do all the things. I gave it a fair shot. I got into training right away and I did everything they told me to do. So it was a lot of cold calling. It was some door knocking, and I hated it, but I also did it. But then I didn't have any results from it. So it was like doing these activities that were miserable and not seeing any results was just like, okay, what's the point of this? But I saw them working for other people because obviously we do know that these things do work. So that was really frustrating. At the same time, so I would spend my mornings on the phone, and then I would spend my afternoons and evenings going to networking events and meeting people in person. Everybody's different. I'm not here to say that all introverts are better in person, I'm better in person. And so I really liked meeting people face to face. I didn't really have much of a sphere because I didn't grow up in Massachusetts. So I had to go create that from scratch, which took a long time. And that's just kind of what I found worked for me. So the most challenging part was once I realized that, probably a year and a half in, I finally was able to let go of the cold calling piece and not feel guilty about it. And I think that's where most people struggle once they decide, if they decide that's not for them, uh, there's this whole mindset shift that has to happen. And there's a lot of guilt that needs to be released in order to move on and go do other activities that are more productive.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that is one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is when you're starting out, there's certain things that people who are more successful in the industry who has come before you that tell you to do these things, and you're not sure, right? If you just need to kind of suck it up and do it, or if there's another way. So I think my question is, if you were just talking to somebody who's kind of brand new into real estate, who are very uncomfortable doing cold calling, and even uncomfortable talking to most of their sphere, kind of introducing themselves as, hey, I'm in real estate, calling, everybody on their phone, which however many contacts they have, is that something that, you just have to, in a way, overcome? Or is there other ways that, you don't necessarily have to get into that, and there's other ways of marketing and, getting yourself out there, where, it's a little bit more comfortable and, more suiting to your lifestyle?
Right. I would say both. So I would say for a brand new agent, give cold calling a shot, give it a try because you might end up enjoying it. If it works for you and if you're able to close business that way, then the money you make is going to make it worth feeling uncomfortable. So I will say give it a shot, knowing that if you spend, a couple months doing it and you're not getting anything from it and it's just absolutely miserable, it's okay to then move on to other activities. So I would say both things. Yes, there are a lot of activities that can bring business. You got to kind of try them all, but then give yourself that permission to say, okay, I'm going to try this for this amount of time. And if I don't get what I want out of it, it's okay to move on to something else.
Right. Yeah.
And there should also be multiple lead gen activities happening at the same time. It's not just one or the other. You can have 3 or 4, even 5 things happening at once, and some of them will be more like systematized and leveraged, like a monthly newsletter, email. You can like schedule those in advance so you don't have to spend time doing it every month.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's super important. It's just, setting up the right systems, right? So, how hard would it be to try to get, block out time every week to try to set up, an email newsletter or something like that. So I think having the systems in place is, that's an overall thing, right? But I like what you said, because I think what most people are expecting, what you want to say, or what you would say is, just don't give cold calling a shot, don't even do it. And then just focus on the lead generation activity where you don't have to talk to people. But I like that you kind of bring it up as, just give it a try, right? You might end up overcoming it and actually enjoying it. Because if you don't actually give something a shot and see yourself, trying to do it once, then you never really know, if it's something that you're good at, or if you.
Yeah, exactly. And I never want to be pegged as the anti cold calling coach. That's not it at all. It's just there's multiple options. The other piece of the puzzle is what's your financial situation? How quickly do you need to make a certain amount of money to survive? I have agents I work with who they're they don't have that financial pressure. Either their spouse makes a lot of money or they have a lot of money in the bank from a previous life, a previous career. And so they're like, no, I'm going to do business exactly how I want and stay in my comfort zone, which is totally, totally fine because they don't have to make a certain amount of money.
Right.
So a lot of what I do in my one-on-one work with agents is figuring all that out because everyone's different.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's completely true. So I think that's what, most people don't see is that everybody has a different financial situation, right? And they have different goals that whether or not you need to reach them as quickly as other people, it all depends on you. So I think that is something that you should keep in, like people who are listening here should keep in mind as well, is whether or not this real estate thing is something that you need to have major success immediately, or if this is something like you said where it's supplemental income, you have a little bit more time to build up your business, then you can spend the majority of whatever time, or even if you're working part-time as an agent, the majority of your limited time of hours, so you can work on real estate throughout the day on things that you really enjoy, and on the things that you really feel comfortable with in terms of generating long-term business as well. So let's kind of get back onto the topic of like cold calling, because I think it's very interesting, and it's something that a lot of people, it's just a fear, right, in their mind, and they don't feel comfortable with, because we don't like to disrupt other people's days. And that's, we don't like to call somebody first. It's just we don't like to disrupt somebody's day. So when you're kind of, starting out cold calling, you've never really done something like this in the past, what do you suggest as, some things that could essentially kind of prime yourself or to prepare yourself? I know there's a lot of scripts out in, on the internet, and a lot of things that people say. So what is your suggestion to an agent who is starting out cold calling, and how to succeed and overcome those mental barriers in the beginning?
The biggest thing is that mindset shift from I'm bothering them to I'm offering to help them. And they need help, whether it's a for sale by owner, they can't really do this on their own. I mean, they might be able to get an offer, but they don't know what to do next. They don't know the contracts. They don't know how to keep themselves from getting, in trouble, or they might not even know how to help negotiate the offer forms. They don't know what to do with inspection item requests. Like, they need help. Same thing with expireds. The other agent didn't sell the house. They need help.
Right.
So it's that mindset shift. And it is scary. It's always going to be scary until you do it thousands of times. So that's why it's a good thing to experiment with, but don't like be completely married to the idea that I have to do this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that beats just repetition and getting over your fears over and over again, and getting used to kind of that feeling, right? So I think something else just on that as well is the follow-up. I think people don't feel comfortable following up, right? Like they might overcome the barrier of, calling somebody for the first time and then helping them solve that problem. But, what if somebody is, you've called them and maybe you have a good conversation or a decent conversation, and then you haven't heard from them in a couple of weeks or even a month, and you're kind of afraid to follow up. So from a follow up standpoint, what are some things that agents can?
Yeah, I would say follow up is even more important than generating the lead in the first place. There are so many leads, like everyone listening, you probably have a lot of leads. You might not just think of them as hot leads. Maybe they're cold or dead, but they're not unless they hire somebody else or tell you to go away forever. So follow up is really the key. And the way to think about it is if they don't hear from you, they're going to think that either you don't care, or they're going to think that they are not important to you. So that's again a mindset shift. I'm not bothering them. I'm offering to help them and keeping in touch. And if I don't keep in touch, they're going to think, well, I guess that person doesn't care enough to follow up with me. And
Right.
sometimes it can take a lot of follow-ups. One of my agents just closed on a buy sell, 2 transactions. Somebody she'd follow up with for 2 years, and they never responded to her, by the way. It was just cold following up. And then when they were ready, because remember, it's about them and their timetable. When they were ready, they got back in touch and they said, hey, thanks for checking in for so long. We weren't ready. Now we are. it was almost $1 million in business.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that just kind of goes to show, right? The power of continuing to stay in touch. And I like what you said about it being their timetable, because I think when it comes to follow up, a lot of it is just timing, right? Because you're not going to hit them on the right time the first time. And, if you spread it out consistently, and maybe you can touch on this as well of, what's the best ways and how often somebody should be following up, and not, and then knowing when to give up as well is, what do you think is the most consistent way to follow up with somebody, and how often should they be following up with them in order to kind of maximize the chances of hitting the right time for both you and the client?
So it's a lot of different aspects to this. First, I would ask, is this a past client? Is this someone in your sphere who you're already friends with? Or is this somebody who's completely cold and has never responded to you? So each of those three buckets is going to be treated a little bit differently. But in general, the idea is to keep in touch with people in a variety of ways consistently. So an example could be a monthly email, a monthly something in the mail. It could be a quarterly call or text that's more personal. It could be an invitation to a client party, whether that's once a year, twice a year, 4 times a year, however often you want to do your client appreciation events. And then something, for the holidays or for the new year, something in the mail that's like a little gift.
Right.
That's one example of a system. And then you add in your social media touches, and that's a whole other thing.
Right. Yeah. I think social media is more of a follow-up tool, in my opinion, right? I mean, do you think that as well, as more of a lead generation or more of a follow-up tool than a lead generation tool?
It's more of a staying top of mind, which, yeah, that's part of follow-up. Because when you are the one who's actively, it's not really about what you're posting, in my opinion, and I'm not a social media expert, but it's more about how you're interacting with your people. So if you have a friend who's potentially a lead in 2 years from now or 3 years from now, if you're keeping in touch with them via social media and you're liking and commenting on their stuff, they're going to get a notification and it's going to show your name. So even if that has nothing to do with real estate, you're staying top of mind with them so that when they're ready, they didn't forget you and they didn't go work with the agent who they met a week ago at an open house.
Right. Yeah, that is super important, is staying top of mind. And I think this is something that not a lot of people, touch on as well, is the, engagement on social media. Everybody likes to think, what should they post? Should I use static posts, right? Or reels, right? But the engagement part, right? Like you said, is even more important.
Yeah, it is. And that's more time consuming because it's one-to-one, not one-to-many, but it's a lot more impactful.
Right. It is. And when it comes to that, is there a system that, you like to use, or you like to teach your agents to use, or is it just kind of time blocking throughout the day or throughout the week of just doing it yourself personally and give it more of that personal touch?
It can be both. There's a system that's pretty easy to follow, and it is personal because it's you reaching out to them. It has nothing to do with your posts, but it's called the 10-5-1. So it doesn't have to be every day, but however often you want to do it throughout the week, maybe twice or 3 times a week. Set aside time to do 10 outbound likes or, reactions, 5 comments, and then 1 direct message to a person saying, hey, I saw this. It's easier to do that when there's a trigger, when you see somebody had a new baby or somebody got engaged. Hey, just saw this on Facebook. Congratulations. So happy for you. How's everything going?
Yeah. That's a great tip. I just wrote that down, the 10-5-1, right? Because this
Yeah.
is, I'm taking notes here. So you guys are listening or watching this, make sure to write that down, because this is a very simple process. It's not a lot, right? Just liking 10 posts, right? Is that things then just liking your sphere of influence or your friends' posts, and then leaving a positive comment. And like you said, if you see there's a major milestone or achievement, right? Just reach out and, kind of offer that support, offer that, knowing that you care about them. And I think at the core of it, and you can, expand on this as well. It's just about caring about your sphere, caring about your clients, and caring about other people, rather than, thinking it's all me, right?
100%. And
Yeah.
a big part of following up with your past clients is making them feel like you do care about them versus they were just a paycheck and now you disappeared because you got paid. It's a
Right.
big difference. And the key is the follow up.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be, the text or the call asking them, do you want to buy a house now? Or do you want to buy a house now? Or do you want to,
I would never recommend somebody say that, by the way.
right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Cause it's so upfront and aggressive, right? It's not, it just kind of shows that you don't really care about them, in that sense. So, yeah, I mean, it's great to have, a good system of follow up and thinking of it, staying in touch with somebody who you have a genuine relationship with. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. And then in terms of your content, telling stories, telling stories versus, hey, who wants to move today?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
success stories of your clients, funny stories that happen, something interesting you saw at a house on a showing, like things that are real estate related, but they're interesting.
Right. Yeah. Because if somebody is looking to move today, they'll probably let you know before before you ask them, right?
If you're keeping in touch, yeah, absolutely. Get them to come to you. And I mean, there's a lot of like small things that you can do, groundwork you can lay, but running around to your friends and family and every day you see them asking if they want to move, they're going to start avoiding you.
Right. Yeah. That's the last thing you want is for people that you already know to start avoiding you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I think these are a lot of great tips for people, whether you're an introvert or a natural salesperson. These are all just great nuggets that, you're dropping here for our audience. So, when it comes to kind of getting to the closing process, and I guess you already kind of mentioned this as well, is, there's not necessarily a point in time where you ask somebody to, be their agent, or you ask somebody to essentially close on them as a client, or when are you ready to move, right? So it's more of just kind of leaving the door open. And is there anything else to it, or is it just more kind of leaving the door open, and then whenever they're ready, you just let them come to you and being open to it?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, there's
Right.
definitely a place for, and it is actually very important to to close for those certain steps. So as soon as you know that somebody's thinking about, we'll do both, we'll do buyer and seller. As soon as you know somebody's thinking about buying, even if it's a year from now or 2 years from now, the trigger is, okay, why don't I put you in touch with a lender that I know and trust, and you guys can start the pre-approval process. I know it's early, but the reason we do this early on is just in case anything funky comes up on the credit report, or there's anything that's a little bit weird that needs to be worked through, because that can potentially be time consuming. And that way, when you are ready, you're not being held back from putting in an offer. And so it's always good to like get them to the lender ASAP, and then you can, work with them and the lender to figure out when's the appropriate time to have the buyer consult. So having those, and then in those moments, and at the moment where it's time to write an offer, you do need to, you know, take a deep breath and ask the question. Do you want to write an offer on this house? Would you like me to be your agent? Like those are really key steps that you do have to take, even if it's a little uncomfortable. But you'll know when those times are. I'm talking about taking a little bit softer approach during the time period where you're just friends. You haven't started talking about them doing any sort of business yet. And on the seller side, the first step, oh, I'm thinking about maybe selling my house next year. Okay, great. why don't I come over and just give you some ideas of if you need to do any painting or small improvements you can make over the course of time. And that way, when you're ready, the property is also ready and you don't have to wait and you don't have to miss the spring market. That's what all sellers are worried about, you know. So getting your foot in the door and making progress in a subtle way is really, really important.
Right. I mean, you hear the stories all the time, right? And you see, mostly you see them on Facebook groups of other agents where, they've been helping their friend or family member with their real estate questions, and then they went with another agent, right? So it is important to ask, or you not be given, right? Or you not receive.
Right, you have to be explicit in the conversation. And it can feel weird, and that's okay. Let it feel weird and just do it anyway, because what feels a lot worse is if they hire somebody else.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's really a, like we call it like a gut shot, right? If they someone really close to you goes with another agent.
right.
Yeah.
And so you'll find the right kind of flow of this. You'll see everyone's a little bit different, and occasionally someone will go off the rails and hire somebody else anyway, but at least you know that you had the conversation, like, are you planning to hire me to sell your house? If not, I'm happy to refer you to somebody else. I just want to know now.
Yeah. That's actually really great. I think that was, it's easy to get missed, but you just said something that was really great there. It was, if not, I can refer you to somebody else, right? And in that case, you're still part of the transaction or that referral fee, but you're not necessarily their agent. So you're always keeping the door open, and I love that that you're sharing that with the audience as well, because I think
Yeah,
people think it's one or the other. But if you're able to leave that door open and be explicit, and have other people understand that this is your business and not just having a friendly conversation, then it makes it a lot easier uh, to business, right? Whether if it's you representing them as their agent, or even on a referral, like you said, as
right.
well.
Yeah, that's a good script to use with friends and family. And you can acknowledge that they might be uncomfortable working with someone they're close to and have a personal relationship with. You can say, I completely understand and I won't be offended at all, but tell me what you're thinking and who you'd like to work with. And if it's not me, tell me, give me some criteria of what
Right.
you'd want in an agent, and I'll go find that person for you. I'll do all the work to find that person and refer them. No hard feelings.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. That's just a great script to have in mind as well, as an agent, because there's so many different ways that you can help somebody, and it's not necessarily just making that sales commission by representing them. So that was a great nugget, and I've never really even thought about that in the past. So hopefully our audience here who are listening or watching this are writing it down, taking some notes, right, to get more business in their pipeline. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I mean, I think just shifting topics a little bit here. You're currently a director of growth for 3 different offices. So speaker at many events, and recognized as one of the top leaders and coaches in the entire industry. So I think for the people listening or watching here who are stepping into more of a leadership position, who are building maybe a team or getting a couple of agents together that they want to work with or partner up with, being somebody who's a little bit more introverted, what is it like, being a leader and helping other people and empowering them in a way?
I find it extremely fulfilling. This is
Right.
the role that I've enjoyed the most so far. And it is the introvert part for me is difficult in all the meetings. So
Right.
how this plays out for me is by the afternoon, like late afternoon. If I've had a lot of meetings and done a lot of talking, I'm pretty tired. So I do see that energy drain happen in myself, and I'm aware of it. And so I know that sometimes in my evenings, I'll need to say no to an event or something and just kind of stay home and recharge for the next day. So that's where I think it's really important to know yourself and know how your energy ebbs and flows, because when you're in a leadership position, you will have more demands on your time and on your energy. And that's not at all a bad thing. It's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. You can help other people in a very different way. And it's important to not let yourself get burned out by being pulled in a lot of directions.
Right. That is so important, right? As you work with more people, it's a little bit different than like working with clients, because as you step into like a leadership position, right? If you're somebody's team leader or somebody's broker, this person is essentially like your partner in business, right? And you don't want to let them down necessarily. But when you get to a certain number of people, it's hard to answer every single text message, answer every single phone call at every hour of the day. So I think, having that system, and maybe you can talk about, some of the different things that you've been able to do to be able to help people and make sure the people you're helping and you're leading and you're coaching are getting the support and feeling loved. But also, it's not just so draining on, on your time and your energy as well, where it's just, making it unfulfilling to a point.
Yeah. I mean, in this role, I support about 400 agents. And,
Yeah.
Obviously I don't talk to all of them
Right.
every day, but I'm available to them. So one tool I've started using that's worked really well is a calendar, a scheduling thing, Calendly. That's the one I use. So I have a half-hour time block that I have this link I send out to people, and they can schedule either a Zoom or an in-person meeting. And that way they know that they'll get one-on-one time with me. And then I know what my day will look like for the most part. So that eliminates a lot of the things that pop up over the course of a day. And I can also control, okay, I can bake in a certain amount of time in between meetings. I can say no more than 6 meetings in a day. You can control all that stuff. And then that saves a lot of conversations too around scheduling. So I would say for anyone who's in a leadership position, or just really anyone in general, I mean, most people are tech savvy enough now to understand like a basic calendar link. If you're, a solo agent, you can send that to your buyers and sellers too. Like, here's my availability. Let's schedule your listing appointment. Like, you could do that via a scheduling tool.
Right. Calendly, that is, I mean, everybody should have Calendly. So
Yeah.
right, it's so convenient, because I think a big part in it, it's a time waster too, to try to schedule, find availability in your day, your week, whatever. Especially when you get more, become more busy, as you get more responsibilities, and then you're trying to schedule meetings with somebody else, and then maybe you find this time works for you and it doesn't work for them, and then you have to move on to like the next day, and then at the point where you even have a meeting scheduled, you're already exhausted from just the amount of work and conversation that you already had. So having a scheduling tool, and are you doing all of this in advance? Like maybe you have like a day in advance, or are you scheduling like your week out in advance to make it even less stressful?
All of my agents have my link all the time, so they can
Okay.
schedule it a day in advance. They can schedule further in advance. So that's a good tool. Another thing to kind of keep in mind when you're working with a partner or working in a leadership team is your own boundaries. So one conversation
Mhm.
that I've had with my leadership team, there are 9 of us, and we've discussed, what are our working hours? And at what point do we stop looking at our email in the evening? Like, it's important if you have a business partner, somebody, like, you guys got to get on the same page so they're not like, hey, I emailed you at 10 p.m. and you didn't respond. Okay, well, I was in bed, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's probably one of the, I would say it's like, it's one of the worst, I don't know, like worst feelings, but it's not a good feeling to try to get a call at like 10 p.m. at night, and have somebody try to kind of pull you away from your day, or like from your own time, when, you've basically turned that off in your mind. And I've had this multiple times as well. And I've just, I've been working on this personally myself as well, is I've gotten called at like 8 or 9 p.m. at night, and then my brain is completely turned off from work. And then I need to turn it back on because, like you said, didn't set the right boundary. So just starting off, right? Like when you first initiate or start that relationship in business, that's the best time, in my opinion, to set the expectations and the boundaries. As well. And do you think that that's the case as well, where you need to set these boundaries right up front in the very beginning, so there's no confusion, as the relationship moves forward?
Yeah, 100%. That's a really important conversation to have with everyone, even your buyers and sellers. Like,
Right.
here are my working hours. If something comes up, if there's an emergency, which PS, there are very few real estate emergencies. Um, but like, it's good to set that expectation at the very first meeting when they're hiring you. Otherwise, they're just going to be, if they're a texter at 10 p.m. and you're not, then they're going to be upset.
Right.
Because if you say, okay, at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, whatever time it is for you, let them know these are my office hours, these are my working hours. Anything that happens after that, I will respond to first thing in the morning.
Right. Yeah, that's so important to set that expectation up front, because it's not only just kind of protecting your own boundaries, but also for, your client or partner as well. They feel offended if you don't respond to them immediately, right? For, whatever emergency they might have, which it turns out might not be such an emergency after all. So I think that's very, very important to have that boundary set. People think in the real estate industry, they think it's a very fast moving industry, and I think what you've shared with us today is that it doesn't have to be, and it can be something where you are in complete control of. And I think that's so important for people to just live an overall better lifestyle than to be dragged along by their job all the time, right?
Yeah, if you're not controlling your calendar, the client is,
Right.
and that's not sustainable.
No, not at all. So yeah. So well, Ashley, I mean, this is a really awesome conversation that we had today. I thought, you shared a lot of value. I even took some notes here as well. So hopefully
Good.
our listeners here got a lot of value out of it. So for people who are interested in learning more about what you do, and maybe, being interested in some of the coaching that you do as well, what are some of the good ways, or some of the best ways that people can, find you either on social media, stay in touch with you, and, keep that relationship open as well, and see some of your content as well?
Awesome. Yeah, I have really three ways to keep in touch with me. I have my website, moveoverextroverts.com. I run a Facebook group called Introverts in Real Estate. And then I have a little baby YouTube channel that I am going to be growing more in 2023. And there's a link to that on the website as well.
Right. Yeah, and we're going to be linking all of that in the description down below. So if you are listening to this or watching this anywhere, just make sure you're checking the description down below. And so I want to thank you again for being on the show and sharing so much value with us today. And if there's anything that you want to leave with the audience, any last thoughts that you want to leave here? Or
Yeah, take time off and take a lot of naps.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Take time off and take a lot of naps. I think it's something that we can all be a part of, and be excited about here in 2023 as well. So Ashley, thank you again for being on the show and agreeing to do this interview. Thanks so much for doing it. And for our listeners tuning in, thanks again for tuning in to our show. And if you need anything at all, just make sure to reach out to me. Make sure to give this show a like, or a subscribe, or a good review. And other than that, thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you guys on the next show. Take care.